welcome to the Rules Committee, the Standing Committee of the Commission on Police Practices. For Thursday, February 13th. Ms. Condi, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Committee Chair Bonnie Benitez.
Yep.
Thank you. CBP Chair Doug Case.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Byer.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rocha Vasquez and Commissioner Lawton are not here yet.
Thank you. And can we have a motion to approve the minutes of November 2nd?
I move to approve the minutes of November 2nd.
Thank you. A second. Please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And thank you. Do we have any non-agenda public comments?
We do not have non-agenda public comment. There are 0 attendees.
You can close the public comment.
What does it say on here?
What?
Oh, we have
I want her to
no,
close the non-agenda public comment.
yes. So we have no in-person participants or virtual participants. This concludes in-person public testimony.
Okay, so this will
And
actually.
just one more thing.
Yes.
And do we have any virtual
No.
non-agenda public comment?
Neither.
All right, we
Yeah.
should state that on the record.
Oh, I thought I said virtual, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
This is only our second Standing Rules Committee meeting, and we almost have an entirely different group of people here today. Doug, you were here, but 2 other commissioners were not. Mr. Lawton was not, and Alice was not. And so what we were doing is introducing basically the bylaws, the current approved bylaws to the committee and going section by section. Actually, I think that you were not in the room, but you were making changes.
Because I think Paul at the time was, I don't know if it was you or Paul, were making the, you guys were jotting it down online, and so I was able to capture what was on
Right.
there.
And we don't have those changes, I don't think, in the materials.
No. I can, were there any links in the previous one that maybe I can open up? I can check the, well, there was a link on the materials, right? For the agenda, I think. Let me see. I can maybe click on
Yeah, because I
the bylaws.
apologize, I have the official with me. I didn't,
Okay.
I couldn't find the version that would have had the proposed changes.
Okay, let me try.
I thought that they were at the office.
Let me try to just pull it up really quick.
But as a priority, I think that what we want to do today is focus on some of the issues around the executive director.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Well, I'll repeat myself then. And
Let me see if it opens up. So we have CPP by, is it the bylaws? I don't know about
Yes,
the
bylaws.
notes, but okay. So let me, actually, I'm gonna share my screen. Sorry, it's hard for me to figure out the mouse on here. Is it this one? Let me get out of this. Oh. This one.
And does that show the changes we made last time?
No. No, the editable version, I don't have that link. Oh, well, is that in the Google Drive?
I don't know if it was in Palm, doing it there along.
yeah,
Okay,
I thought that Alina was actually somewhere in, not in the room, you weren't in the room. But
Mm-mm.
someone I thought was tracking it, but it may be in the Google Drive, I apologize, I
Okay, let
couldn't
me-
find it and I went to the,
I'm sure it's in there. Here's CPP bylaws. Hold on one second. So we have approved. Is it, let's see if it's this one. This shows, I don't know if it's the same date though, approved on 3/6.
yeah.
Yeah?
Nope, I mean, that's the one that was approved last year. but somewhere there's an edited version that reflects the changes that we made at the
November meeting. Where did it go? Actually, I don't think, am I able to show this? I can cut it out if I need to. Am I able to show this part? It's on from the Google Drive?
Yeah, why, I'm not sure why you wouldn't.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, you can show.
Yeah, okay. So, these are the two, unless he was working off of a different version that I don't have
Yeah.
access to.
Right, and it's neither one of those because they can see the date.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think we'll have to circle back to that at a future meeting, but why don't we focus on, unless Doug, you have a better suggestion, I think we should focus on Article 7.
Yeah, I agree. And the meeting is recorded, so we can go back and reconstruct what we did.
Yes. Okay, so I actually would like to entertain some input about, I think we should review the language here in Article 7, Section 1, and consider giving the Public Safety Committee things that we can include, to also consider whether this is the right place for us to incorporate language for the executive director to delineate roles, and also consider for cause language, a removal for cause language, and whether that should be included here, which was sort of my thinking. I reviewed the ordinance and the charter, and the references there to the executive director are so scant, right? That it seems to make a lot more sense to include this language in the bylaws. I had,
The ordinance is pretty clear. But you have, it says director says the direction of the commission.
yes,
But you wanna add except for cause.
well, yeah, and I'd like for us to have a conversation about that because, as we've noted previously, that almost all city employees are at will. And, actually, that was something I asked of Bart when we first met.
What, at the
You mean,
executive level?
you mean our staff, not the entire.
I mean, the city, generally.
Really?
No, I
I'm
think
surprised to
it's-
hear that too.
I think it'd just be the management, I think, that they,
Yeah.
almost everybody is represented by MEA or,
Oh, sure. Right. So I think one of the issues is that, and I'm curious, Bart, to hear your input. If we're going to include for-cause language, that what that does is it creates additional liability for the city, right? And my question is whether the city will be comfortable with the commission essentially drafting and implementing, that language in terms of a potential termination of a future executive director, or if including language like that, because it increases the liability for the city, that they will want to shift that decision away from the commission, if that makes sense.
You think it increases liability for the city? Because there'll be a dispute over what's just cause?
Yes.
Yes,
So, let me understand, okay, so the ordinance itself is clear, right, and it's at will.
Yep.
Your bylaws are a separate document from the ordinance.
Mhm.
It's more of an interworking document, correct?
yes, and we can't contravene the ordinance, but it says, I don't know that the ordinance is clear that it is at will, it's rather
I
that.
don't see it on the kind right now.
Well, I think it's pretty clear.
Where you look
Oh,
at it.
excuse me, at the
The
charter.
direction and will of the commission.
You're looking at the charter,
I was looking at the charter.
saying that the executive director serves at the direction and will.
Does that mean they are?
Does that mean they're at will? And I don't think it does.
Okay, that gives us a little bit of flexibility to, create a, termination process, which would require, grounds for termination and, perhaps, a supermajority to, terminate. We have no language whatsoever in our bylaws or any of our documents on how to terminate.
Correct.
And that's part of the issue, is that we need to have that, that language. It would be good to see, what language the city uses or other organizations use to define the just cause. Because I am certainly not an expert in employment law or even employment practices, and if the city has a definition or language that we could use, that would be helpful.
I need clarification on where we are and where we're going. Let's say we come up with language that we like. It's different than what's in our original bylaws. Then we vote on the commission, and then it goes to the city attorney's office.
Well, the bylaws were approved by the commission, didn't have to go through
So we
the.
redraft them, we present the commission approves. Then it goes to the city attorney?
Nope.
No.
Then-
Well, it shouldn't. I think that as a part of this future meeting, this is my understanding, right? This process that we'll engage in with the Public Safety Committee, that will include the city attorney, that they want to hear what are the things that the commission is going to be doing to address the concerns that were raised at yesterday's meeting. One of those concerns is the hiring of a future executive director and whether they would be at will and would we get the right person in it.
Right, so you're looking at that meeting when we go to the city, the public safety committee and say, here's what we did, isn't this nice? Although I'm looking past that.
Okay.
Because when the public safety committee gets it,
Mhm.
they're gonna get the city attorney, they're gonna get somebody to review.
Correct.
Or,
That is my guess,
So
because
then we get to decide what it is, and we just say, here, this is it. It has to go to another level to be approved again, does anybody know?
Yeah, we'll have to go, if they're gonna put it, well, it depends on what they do with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would recommend that we not make an ordinance change, and that we do it in the form of an operating procedure, which, is much easier to change and quicker to change than an ordinance, but we're gonna make a recommendation, but ultimately the Public Safety Committee will move forward some recommendation to the full city council, and the full city council will then vote. And if it's an ordinance change, then it also would require a second reading and all the things that go along with amending the ordinance.
So you're saying
Why don't we
operating
jump to the
procedure?
ordinance? I'm still on bylaws.
Me too.
We do our bylaws, we go, this is it, this is what we want, these are our bylaws, here.
we don't believe that they contravene the existing ordinance.
Okay, well, and we can try that approach and say, we're recommending, the following changes to our bylaws, which we believe will resolve the issues that have been raised. And if they're happy with that, then that would be the best case scenario, because we believe everything in our court, and it's much easier for us to change our bylaws than for them to.
So it doesn't require approval of the public safety committee or the city
The
council.
bylaws
If we
changes do
change it,
not.
do not, okay.
However, I would absolutely predict that if we were to put something in our bylaws, that in this collaborative meeting that we're going to be having in the future, that the city attorney reads and says, you can't do that,
Yeah,
right?
and so.
Right.
This would be my question.
Mhm.
So, if I understand the thought process behind it, it's, we can put whatever we want in the bylaws, they're our bylaws. Doesn't have anything to do with the city, it's our bylaws. The ordinance, but the ordinance, I think, seems to indicate that, you can fire at will of the commission. And to change that, you're saying, okay, at will, the commission, and our will is in our bylaws, which says we can only do it for cause. Is that?
Correct.
the
It
front?
is still within the purview of the commission to terminate the employment of the executive director. But at will is, I'm terminating you because your eyes are blue. I'm just saying, for no unlawful reason, right? You could be terminated for no unlawful reason. And we would be creating a structure within which we're saying we can terminate our executive director for these things. But it would still be the decision of the commission. So I don't see that it contravenes.
Well, what helps us is the language of the ordinance is a little bit vague, serves at the direction at will. It's a little bit vague, so that kind of helps us.
Yeah, so I agree with you too. It's a creative interpretation, but I think it works.
Right, but to the extent that we can be consistent in our language with any other language that the city currently uses for termination for cause, then it's not gonna trigger the city attorney to say, we don't like that language, because again, we are creating liability ultimately for the city. And so I wanna be as consistent as we can be in terms of our language within the bylaws we're accomplishing a couple of things. We're accomplishing, in theory, a future executive director feeling like they have some job security, they can't just get a group of commissioners that don't like them for whatever reason and want to terminate them. That's legitimate, right? And we're creating our internal process, but I don't want to do anything that the city would find offensive.
How do we get our hands on a city at will or for cause document, a language?
Someone might ask.
I think our general counsel maybe can
Oh,
find that
yeah. I
out.
mean, I don't know what the city does, I know,
But you have a contract, right? Or you
No,
don't
he's
have.
at will.
I'm not will,
So
the
is there-
executive director.
At will, that's right, you're not for cause, so we need to find somebody who's.
No, but I would
Not at
assume
will.
that maybe there are people that are, I mean, at the city of Chula Vista, we contracted people and had them under contract, and contracts called for
Correct.
firing for just cause, and here's what just cause was. So I think we just ask,
Right,
over
just
there
ask
and
the
say,
city attorney.
just ask the city and say, we,
Send us a sample of what you use on,
here's a Public Records Act request, we'd like all,
so there's an action item, he gets an action item over.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to
Yeah,
do a
I mean,
public
like, the
record, can't
language
you
is-
just call the?
yeah, I can just call
Call
them,
the
you know what,
human resource.
Yeah, no, I
Right,
think,
and then we'll just incorporate that, and then when they say, oh, we hate that language, we'll say, "Oh,
Well, something else that I think needs to be intertwined with this is the annual performance review.
correct,
I mean, because normally a person, if you're firing somebody for a cause, it's for
yeah, that's.
usually one of two things, either they do something really stupid that merits them being terminated, or in the performance review, they don't get a good performance review and they decide to seek another person,
That language in the ordinance and in the bylaws.
all right? And we need to have a process for evaluating the executive director, we don't have that now. We haven't had an executive director for a year yet, really had to do it, but we do need
but is
to.
this what the personnel committee's gonna be working on?
We need to work that process in the bylaws.
Not in the bylaws, no, but I think we need a separate operating procedure for this is how we do
Right.
although it could be in the bylaws.
From back to the bylaws now. You're gonna find out, what the city's favorite language is. It's not for cause, and we try to massage that into bylaws, and then when we present it to, whoever we present it to. Does that sound right?
Sure.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what,
And we're
that's,
gonna present it to ourselves first, because
we'll present it to ourselves, we'll, I think we need to look at this administration, Article 7 language that we have right now. The other thing that we're essentially charged with is delineating the rules between the chair and the executive director. Now, that can be done in operating procedures or it can be done in the bylaws, there's so many layers here. And given that the bylaws already describe the role of the executive director and what the executive director does in section 1 of Article 7, it seems to me that this is also the appropriate place to maybe spell more specific things out. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I suggested that we look at the actual job description of the executive director
Mhm.
to see whether or not there's anything that's in there that's missing from our bylaws, and we gotta put in the bylaws.
Okay.
And then it would be helpful, and I don't really know exactly what all of the conflict points were between our former executive director and chair. And so I'm not sure what needs to be clarified because I don't know what the issues were.
Well, you were on the cabinet, what do you know?
But most of them are like private discussions between the two of them. And I can give you one example, but, and I think maybe it was typical of what would be going on. Remember, they were working on a news release. And the issue arose since the chair was the spokesperson. They were wondering who should be listed as the contact, and Gloria didn't want to be listed as the contact because they didn't want the media contacting her at work with her calls, and suggested that the executive director be listed, and if there was a request for an interview, that it would refer to Gloria or whatever. And Paul said, well, it's not my job to be your secretary. And so those are the kind of tensions that arose, and that's just one example, and I don't know what the others were. I know that there were many, because Dennis mentioned that they were always, and Paul mentioned it too, but I don't know, they never really shared with me. It wasn't that disagreeing with the cabinet, and it really was an issue of what's the role of the chair versus the executive director, and sometimes that it could have been the chair speaking on behalf of the commission, but unfortunately, I can't tell you what those issues were.
Right, and something that you missed by not being here at the November meeting was that one of the things that came in before that meeting was a request, actually from the previous chair to make it so that the executive director was also a spokesperson for the committee, for the.
Well, yeah, you're right, and I think it should be.
Yes.
And that's something that we actually already did clarify, but it should be in our bylaws that,
Right, and in the draft that we don't have in front of us today, I believe that language is already included. That either happened right before the November meeting, or it happened
It happened
while
at our
Paul
last-
and Gloria were still here.
what happened at our last rules committee meeting.
Okay.
And I forget whether we said they were both the spokesperson or the chair could delegate it to because right now, the wording of the current bylaws
Yes.
is that the chair can only delegate it to another commissioner. And that created a problem because then the executive director couldn't be the spokesperson. And obviously, I think we wanted to have the executive director be able to be the spokesperson, especially if you have a volunteer person who's getting media calls that an executive director could easily field. So that could be one.
So I think that we need to address this on two fronts. One is the powers and duties of the members of the cabinet and the powers and duties of the executive director to make sure that where there's overlap, that it's very clear, and where there's a delineation, that's also very clear. Does that make sense?
Well, and maybe in addition to clarifying it in our bylaws, have a chart, just as an informational thing that we can show the city council saying these are the duties of the chair, these are the duties of the executive director, and these are shared duties. Sometimes
Sure.
they are shared.
Yeah, and sometimes they are shared, and I know that one area the only area that I'm familiar with that apparently was a source of contention was what is and is not going on the agenda for the meeting, and who gets to decide. Now, in my other life, it's not this, because you're a team, right? I mean, really, your chair and your executive director should be a team. And so it's hard for me to imagine arguing over, do you get to decide what's going to be on the agenda, or do I get to decide?
Why should the bylaws do say that? I mean, the bylaws do say the chair decides what goes there, but,
That's the exclusive authority of the chair.
Right.
but it probably should be that way, but it should be, done after a collaborative process that involves the executive director and involves the executive
The
committee.
executive committee.
Which is why I'm suggesting we have the executive committee meeting the week before, because the executive committee can then help chair decide what's gonna be on the agenda. It's not just the chair deciding unilaterally. But I don't think it's the role of the executive director to decide what goes on the agenda. I do think that is a commission role and chair role. No. with input of the executive director. And I don't know, it might be helpful, and I'm not sure the best way of doing it, to try to find out what some of the tension points were between Gloria and Paul.
We know what they were. They just didn't get along.
Okay, but is there anything,
They each wanted to dominate.
okay,
But to what extent can we
Yeah.
help with future
Yeah, oh,
relationships?
yeah, so my question is, are there things where they disagreed over who was supposed to do what, and then we can clarify, we can be the
How
referee
do we
with
do
it.
that? If it's a personality conflict, if Brad might just completely, if he's a Chiefs fan, I'm a Phillies, Eagles fan, and we cannot agree, we can't draft.
Well, I agree that a lot of it is personality, but sometimes it is what is the role. So, say for example, they were arguing over whose responsibility it was to,
For the press release.
yeah, to the press release, or even on the agenda, you know, you can point to what it says in the bylaws very clearly, the chair sets the agenda. However, I know that, talking about the agenda, Gloria used to prepare the entire agenda, and so she would send it to Alina, and then, you know, then they would send it out. I don't think that the chair needs to do the clerical work, and so what I do is that I give Alina, these are the agenda items, and then she prepares the actual physical agenda. I decide what's gonna go on it, but I don't, you know, organize, you know, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I found that out because we were working on the first agenda that's on, you know, Paul and I were working on it together as we should. And I suggest, you know, I asked if he could put it together based on our discussion, and he goes, well, that's the way it should be done. And that's what I learned, that Gloria used to do it herself.
So, can I throw something in?
Yes.
Just, on the conflict between who can put it on the agenda, the executive director or the chair, you know, there might be some conflict there, a lot, if you have
You mean personality conflicts or legal conflicts?
both, actually.
What are the legal conflicts?
Well, there's no legal conflict now, it's the chair gets to put it on.
Right now.
And if the executive director, in my view, sees something going on that the commission needs to
Yes.
hear about or decide, and he goes to the chair, and the chair doesn't like it, and the chair says, no, I'm not putting that on, that's a problem. So maybe you say, well, the executive director can include items on the executive committee chair, so you can bring it up to somebody, and then they can decide whether or not they.
Or the chair gets 4 agenda items and the executive director gets 2 or something like that.
Well, I mean, usually you have an executive director's report.
Well, we usually have a trip about whether it's collaboration.
Correct, but you could have a Chiefs Eagles situation, right? Because we can't predict the future and the personalities of a future executive director and a future chair. So we're trying to set these people up for success,
Correct.
right? So, I mean, I hate to have to incorporate language like this, but it's like where there is a conflict, you know, where there's a disagreement. I have other structural issues that I would like to, you know, address here that are more about, and I don't wanna take away from the efficiency of it just being the chair and the executive director, but we do have an executive committee. And so, the bylaws as they're currently written have a cabinet, which is all we were operating with for almost 18, well, we're at 18 months now, right? So, yeah, for 16 months, there was only the cabinet, and essentially what we're learning is that there wasn't really the cabinet, there was the chair. I mean, there was the cabinet.
Yeah, but yeah, there was well, the cabinet was meeting like weekly.
Yes,
And then when Paul came on board, he said you shouldn't be meeting weekly because there isn't really the authority. The cabinet was doing what the executive committee should be doing.
Mhm.
And he said, you know, you need to establish an executive committee, you shouldn't be meeting weekly and doing business, because there's limited things that the cabinet should be doing. And so the cabinet stopped meeting, there was a period of time, and you're correct, of about 6 months, maybe longer than that, when it was just Paul and Gloria, because the cabinet wasn't meeting. Now, Gloria would consult the cabinet and send text and ask questions and so forth, but there weren't cabinet meetings and there were no executive committee meetings because they didn't appoint, standing committee chairs and there wasn't an executive committee.
Correct.
But if we did, if we go back to this idea of a chart, we put the chart saying, you know, the, chair sets the agenda. And then if you had the third column talking about shared responsibilities, you can say in consultation with the executive director and the executive committee.
And the executive committee.
And that's the way it was done. You know, I was chair of the CRB, that's what we did. Charmaine and I got together, we talked about what should be on the agenda, she gave suggestions, and if we had an executive committee meeting prior to the meeting, which we often did, then we used, you know, they helped decide what was gonna be on the agenda. And so, like I said, I don't know how to find out what other tension points there were that can be clarified in a document as opposed to a personality conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't fix everything, right?
And, I mean, I can contact both of them and ask if there's anything they think should be clarified in our documents.
Mhm.
And see if they have anything to add.
Can I assign myself an action item? What I can go online and see if I can find bylaws for other police oversight commissions around the country, and we can look at other people's bylaws and see if there's anything we want to plagiarize or.
Well, it doesn't necessarily even have to be oversight agencies, it could be like nonprofit organizations or other commissions in the city or other commissions.
Yeah, I think it might be nice to look, I don't know if the Ethics Commission has its own bylaws, does it? Do you know?
I don't know.
I reached out to them, so, I'll see, I'll find out.
Okay.
They're kind of in transition too. Their executive director is leaving.
Oh.
And,
I thought they just hired an executive director.
they did, but for whatever reason, they didn't have her start date till March 19th. They wanted this transition period, and so the new executive director, for whatever reason, is a little reluctant to discuss things until she's the actual executive director.
I see.
But, I move that Alec be assigned to do research.
Yeah, I'll volunteer for that action.
And look, there could be other boards, there are some other, they're not independent, but there are city boards that have an executive director, like the Arts and Culture Board has an executive director. I'm sure there may be some county commissions where there's an executive director, but you could look at other nonprofit organizations and then look at, contact NACOL and see if, you know, they can give you some suggestions of oversight boards that have, and even if they report to the executive director, you could have a situation where, like previously, Charmaine reported to the mayor's office, reported to a deputy,
Office of Boards and Commissions.
What?
The director of office.
No, she reported to a deputy operations, city operations,
Charmaine of the
Officer.
CRB or Charmaine of?
yeah, Charmaine of the CRB. And, but it was still the same type of issue of what, you know, so even if they're not, if they're not employed by the board or commission, there still is a delineation of what the board does and what the chair does, and so there are probably lots of examples out there. And
after I complete my investigative efforts, do you want me to email you, or what's the appropriate way to do it? I can email everybody on the committee with what my findings, or do I just email
This is
the
an ad
chair?
hoc committee.
no, it's a standing.
That was a standing committee, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm thinking.
So you
I
can,
email her directly with the results
you
of
can
my-
do it, but you can't do the whole committee, right?
Correct.
But you can send it to her and she can assimilate it, and we're kind of in a little bit of a time crunch because we want to get all this done by March 5th.
So council, I email her and.
Sure, you can do it that way. CC me.
CC to.
Okay.
And did you send Bonnie, the job description, and I sent it to Darlene. Yes, I think you did.
Yeah, I think I did not. No, I think I seen the job description, no. Okay, that's all I wanted.
Possibly. Dan Lawton, he's recovered from 2 surgeries and was able to make a meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we have a lot of things that we need to focus on. Can we look at page 9 of the bylaws and consider whether we want to make any, aside from number 5, about acting as a spokesperson, are there any other areas of the definition of the chair that we feel like we need to address?
Well, actually, it does say in consultation with the executive director.
We're at
I'm looking at number
page
4.
9 of the bylaws. Do you have a page number on the bottom of the bylaws?
Exactly, it's supposed to-
Article 4,
Okay.
Section 3.
Is it, was it like a huge difference, like the new,
I'm sorry?
if I pull this up, is it like a massive difference from what was done last time? Like what should have been changed?
No.
No,
So I'm gonna
it
pull
was
it up on here.
tweaks. It was
Just tweaks here and there, okay.
Yeah.
Not doing it.
No,
No, I-
I wanted to jump to, because we need to get the job description to see what we need to incorporate to Article 7.
I
I'm sorry,
think-
what the?
One of the maybe friction points would be communication with
What number?
number 6, the mayor, the city council, and the chief of police. So that they're not doing contradictory things.
Mhm.
And I know that Paul always made a point of working with the chief of staff as opposed to the council member.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether Paul ever had any direct,
Elena, you're on Article 4, go up a little bit. There you go, we're gonna be right there for just a
Oh,
second.
okay,
and the
thank you.
deputy operating officer was like his liaison to the city, and so he didn't, I don't think he ever contacted the mayor directly, but if he had issues regarding city management, he worked through the deputy.
And can you scroll down just a little bit, so if you have chair at the top of the page?
And if you look at
Wait a second.
Paul's exit memo,
Oops.
you can kind of see that that's all the people that he copied.
Mhm.
You note that he didn't copy any city council members, didn't copy the mayor, but he copied the chief operating officer, the deputy chief operating officer, the chiefs of staff, and
Mhm.
so forth. And so it might be worthwhile to clarify when the executive director should talk with the mayor or talk with individual city council members as opposed to city staff. On the top of my head, I don't have the exact language for that, but I think, you know, when you're talking about like policy level, that probably should be the role of the chair, unless the chair wants to ask, you know, or do things jointly, like back in the CRB days, we had meetings with individual city council members and the mayor, and we actually had one with the mayor as the CPP. And it was a joint thing of, you know, the chair and sometimes other officers and the executive director would go together. But I could see an issue with if an executive director was contacting a city council member or the mayor without the knowledge of the chair and, you know, working on whatever it happened to be. I could see that, you know, creating some conflict.
Right, but at the same time, I don't wanna tie the hands of our paid lead staff person in terms of communicating with anyone that he or she feels like they need to get things done on the,
Right.
on the part of the CPP, so,
I'm just raising an issue, I'm not saying I have the answer, but it
Yeah,
may be
sure.
that, you know, that if the executive director is gonna personally contact the mayor, that the chair should know about that.
you gonna say something?
Yes, but,
Yeah, let me just, I think that one of the things that, one of the ways that we can handle this is by saying that, I really don't wanna tie the hands of our executive director. But if Alec were the executive director and he had a meeting with city council member so-and-so, or even their, chief of staff, then you memorialize that in writing, right? You summarize your contact, if it's not already in writing, and then you provide that to the executive committee. I'm concerned about over empowering the chair, who is also a volunteer, right? And so, whether that's in a future report or whatever, but usually these things are in writing, you're sending a memo, you're sending an email or whatever. But if you go and have a meeting, then you
report on the meeting.
report on the
And
meeting.
then if you look in the bylaws under the executive director, it says the executive director is the liaison between the commission and city
Yes.
departments,
Yes,
in particular the SDPD and the city attorney's office.
correct.
And on our chart, maybe we can keep those two things, but that an expectation is that that's not being done in a vacuum. In other words, if the chair meets with the mayor or a city council member unilaterally, that they notify the executive director before and after,
And vice versa.
and vice versa.
Yes, it's 5:18.
Yes,
I feel as though we're not as focused as we should be.
I understand.
We should be hitting items and considering items and then proposed modifications, if any, but we're having these general philosophical sections.
Well, I
So
think-
it's just my own personality, is not more linear, although it's necessary to have these discussions, but time is racing by. Is there what else in Article 4 did you want to discuss or?
yeah, I think that the issue is that because right now, we wanna work on the, for cause language, and we wanna be consistent with the city, so we need to bring that back. We don't have the job description in front of us, I believe, of the executive director, and we wanna make sure that there's consistency there, we do that. And,
Then can I ask,
Yeah.
make a request of the chair, since we have a homework assignment for
Mhm.
Alec?
Action item.
Action item, okay, an action item for the chair of the committee
Mhm.
to compare the job description to what's in our bylaws, if any specific in the bylaws to add that.
Can I copy this? I can look the copy.
Oh, I can go do it for you.
I can.
Okay.
but no, I agree with Alec, I feel like, what would have been this meeting has been a bit thrown off by yesterday's event, so I wanna make sure that we're able to kind of, consider the things that,
But I suspect that when Alec is Richards, you're gonna find several things you probably ought to include on both of those lists.
yes.
And,
Yeah, and I feel like we have the leeway to do it here, so long as we're not bumping up against other sort of governing documents, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so back to the chair. So you're saying, aside from the language that is in the draft, that we will have access to shortly about speaking on behalf of the commission, so spokesperson for the commission to make official statements for the commission or to delegate this responsibility to another.
well, and actually, the language is, and reading it is actually worded the way we just discussed it. It says, coordinate with the executive director on communication with the commission, the mayor, the city council, and the chief of police. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about number 5,
Number 5 under,
the one right above it.
on number 5, yeah, but we already changed that.
I know. I just can't remember exactly how.
Oh, okay.
So, So to delegate this responsibility to another commissioner or the executive director is what you believe we have.
Or
We were talking about item 5 under chair.
Okay, so it looks like the things that are under the position should be everything that we should,
Yep. Okay,
yeah, and actually, I already see some things there which I don't think were included in our bylaws, and so.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you could do that, that would be helpful. A little kind of weird what is written.
is something missing? Because it goes from the position duties
Yeah, I think
to the top of the next page, which is
Yeah,
just sort
something
of
is missing.
qualities.
Is it double-sided?
it's double-sided, and you
Oh,
didn't
it's
get
double
it.
sided, only with one side.
Yeah, I was going to, it went from the position and then it looked like it was, yeah, then now it
Okay.
makes more sense, and so.
Um,
See, Alex said he could run the copier, but he couldn't after all.
So, is there any other way that we can incorporate communication with a larger executive committee into the chair language?
Well, let's look at the executive committee. What page is that on?
It is 12, page 12. Number A, under, Article 6, Section 2, standing committees.
Doesn't take a lot, does it?
No,
Well, I definitely would put the one we discussed, and this was already here, it says,
and Bart, I take your point, and that is that if for some reason there's a frustration on the part of the executive director that, where there's, this with the chair, that the executive director should be able to bring anything, to the, executive committee,
Sounds like it could.
which is chosen by the chair, not elected by the commissioner, the way that it
yeah, I
currently
mean, the way it
is.
is now, it gives the chair quite a bit of authority.
Yeah, so, in many other organizations, you don't have a cabinet and then an executive committee. You have an executive committee, and the executive committee is made up of officers that are elected by the body, right? As opposed to committee chairs, which are appointed by the chair, right? It's a very different model. So I remember when I very first started and we were looking at this, I'm like, it made no sense to me, but I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the way that it works.
Well, and the cabinet only has very limited,
Right, I don't really understand why the cabinet exists. I don't understand why we don't just have an executive committee. And the executive committee is the body that reviews the executive director, that acts between meetings on an urgent basis, that does the other things that are listed here. I think that having a cabinet itself is a bit duplicative.
although I think it makes sense to have a small group that handles allegations of impropriety rather than having a full executive committee do that. I'm not sure that we need, number 2 there. Number 2 is to provide supervision and consultation with the executive director to ensure the commission fulfills its purpose, mission, duty. That can be done by the executive committee, so we could actually take out the cabinet and have a separate provision for dealing with allegations of impropriety. And then and say that should be done by the officers, and take out the concept of the cabinet.
Mhm.
Just remove.
Right, and so the officers, right, rather than having chairs of standing committees comprise your executive committee, your officers, and there should be more than 3, should comprise the executive committee.
Really, why do you think two more than 3? What else would you suggest for,
Because I think, 5,
by what other offices?
you're doing like chair, vice chair, et cetera, like
Like, you don't need-
secretary,
you don't need a secretary.
parliamentarian, first vice chair, chair-elect, I mean, there's other titles that would make up I mean, we wouldn't necessarily have a treasurer, but usually it's sort of like, there's a vice chair, a first vice chair, a second vice chair, a third vice chair, or a secretary, or a treasurer, or a chair-elect, or something like that. There's other language that we could use. But now we're going down another rabbit hole, which
Yeah.
is the restructuring of the entire leadership of the CPP. We were just talking about essentially getting rid of the cabinet and only, and only having an executive committee that would not be entirely appointed by the chair, because again, so much authority and power resides within the chair.
I love that idea.
And then we,
What do you think, Bert?
I'm not a voting member.
I know.
What do you think? What has your experience been with
yeah, but
similar
there's only two
bodies?
duties for the cabinet, and one of them should be the executive committee should do. I do think that it makes sense to have a small group deal with,
Allegations of impropriety, but what you can do,
But exactly, you can have a separate, provision that says how you handle that, and you don't need to have a
you could.
cabinet to deal with it. You could say the officers or certain,
Well, there you could, for example, empower the chair. That assuming it's not the chair that's involved in the impropriety, the chair could select, two other members, for example, of the executive committee to address allegations of impropriety, right? So, and because if it's, you try to avoid conflicts, if it's, you're not gonna talk about this in the entire executive committee, if it's one of the executive committee members that is, has the allegations against
So
them, so.
you've done this topic of how the
Yep.
chair would handle allegations of impropriety of any commission.
Correct.
so we can make a motion to, eliminate the cabinet.
And allegations of impropriety could be brought to the chair or the
Right.
executive director or another member of the executive committee, because if it is you see what I mean?
Right,
You have to create a mechanism by which,
If I'm the one harassing you,
correct,
I'm the chair, you don't wanna come to me.
I really don't.
And so, anyway, we probably are
Yes,
on a different
I'm
path.
gonna work
but,
on this, yeah, which is to change the structure of the leadership of the commission to basically better describe the officers of the executive committee, and not have those officers be chairs of standing committees that are appointed by the chair. The chair should appoint the committee chairs, right? I think that's very standard.
How you vote, we vote for that. How have we been doing it? I thought we were voting.
No,
We're
No,
we vote who we want to.
We seek volunteers,
Is that on an ad hoc committee? So we did that on.
yeah, the ad hoc committee, that,
selects their own chair.
they select their own chair.
Mhm.
And there's also a separate process for the nominating committee. The nominating committee is actually elected by the body and not by the chair,
Correct. Right,
which we have to remember why we're due in May.
yes,
Oh, I see, because the section 7, the chair had the power to appoint chairs and members for all committees. That you're talking about, right?
yeah, and that, I think we cleaned that up actually in the draft as well. Okay, so 4 major areas of proposed work between now and the next committee. We're looking into the 4 clause language, looking into other
Examples of bylaws.
examples of bylaws.
And then comparing this document to the job
Yeah,
description to the.
I'm gonna compare the job description to this. And I'd like to come back with a few sort of structural changes that reflect, some proposed structural changes that reflect what we talked about right now. Are there other issues that you can think of that are the urgent ones? Because we're gonna keep working on the bylaws, but this has gotta be ready for the next commission meeting.
Well, I think if we do those, we'll be in a good position. And you'll be coordinating with Darlene, there'll be some overlap there.
Mhm.
And really, you can coordinate with her to avoid that overlap. She can be working on things like evaluation procedures, that like for example, it would seem obvious that the evaluation procedures and termination procedures would have some,
Mhm.
some linkage and so forth.
Yes.
So you can have all your work done by tomorrow? I like to give Lucy
He does this to me all the time.
Well, you know, I wanna qualify for the bonus, so.
Do we have an executive committee meeting on the 27th?
Is that a Wednesday?
Oh, that's a Wednesday. Yeah, it's 26th.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
On the 26th we do?
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
Because I was gonna say we should meet on the 27th.
Yeah, just for future reference, at least, while I'm chair, we're gonna meet the Wednesday before that first business meeting, so that the executive committee can work on the agenda.
So it's the 26th,
It's the 26th,
4:30 to 5:30?
4:30 to 6. I hate to load us up with meetings, and I don't know what do you know what other meetings are on the calendar, Helena?
No, not yet, but I was actually going to ask you if, cause I know, well, actually, sorry, the outreach committee might look into the 27th as well, 27th?
That's a
Thursday?
Thursday? Yep.
But if nothing's been scheduled yet.
And doesn't the,
Well, the chair of the outreach committee is here.
I'm not
Oh,
gonna-
okay.
And I'm saying, ugh.
and what about the policy meeting? Isn't that on Tuesdays, but what Tuesdays?
Well,
They just
The
had one, I
pursuit.
think.
the police pursuit committee
The pursuit, yeah.
is gonna meet again on the 25th after our meeting on the 19th.
Okay,
Because they're gonna work on a official response or statement, which is also gonna be on the March 5th agenda.
That's also virtual, not in person.
Yeah, but it would probably conflict because,
This is unrelated to this committee, on my outreach committee, if I wanna coordinate the times, I have Yasmin contact the other members of the committee and say, are these dates okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Not me.
You can go through Yasmin. To just logistically set up a meeting is not a Brown Act violation. But it's best to go through staff,
Preferred
Preferred
staff,
yeah.
but if I need to, I can.
because if we get in the habit of going through,
Yeah, because then what
Staff.
happens, it gets loosey-goosey and then people start emailing back and talking about.
are we gonna talk about blah, blah, blah?
Exactly,
Right,
exactly.
Thank you.
okay, so,
and, well, the 27th would be ideal, but Alex has his committee meeting then.
I don't know if we do or not, I'm gonna have Yasmin contact the other members and say, because we have a really tough time getting some of the members to show up.
What I'm thinking is, since we're in a kind of a time crunch,
Yeah.
if you could hold off for a week or two, then we can use that time period for this committee to meet.
Okay, so I'll contact Yasmin, tell tell the rest of the outreach committee that we're gonna hold off and not meet on the 27th.
Well, assuming that works for everybody else.
well, we can do I don't care, we can do the 25th or the 27th, I just don't wanna run into the.
Well, 25th would be hard, because that would be the police pursuits, and that's gonna be virtual.
That's what I'm asking, is I didn't know if they were meeting.
Yeah, they are meeting on that.
Okay,
And-
so yeah, I'm good for the 27th.
Schedule it.
That's for this committee. Rules committee. Four thirty to 5:30.
4:30 to 6. Okay.
I was like, Tricia, we get double time.
Yeah, you'll get double time for this too, from your regular rate of pay.
Sundays, it's triple time,
Were you saying if you were, or when you were?
when I was
You were an electrician?
10 years at General Dynamics. It's a great place to work.
You probably told me that and I forgot, but,
Okay, rules committee, Thursday, 4:30,
Got it?
the 27th.
27th.
I'll, let Gonzalo and Dan know as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we couldn't make more substantive changes. I knew that this was gonna be like a city or pants kind of meeting because we just have things that we wanna fix and not quite enough information.
yeah, well, I think we got off to a good start though.
Mhm.
And
Anything else for the good of the order?
everybody else got the assignment with me, I like that.
Any public comment on any of our agenda items? Does anyone wanna raise their hand and say something from the public?
I can ask. We
we
have
have any
three
people from the
people.
public? We do have,
Oh, yeah, Selena's on there as well. Sorry, I'm just getting to know the script. Let's see, virtual. Sorry. If you are joining us virtually and would like to speak on any of the items discussed, please raise your hand now using the raise hand feature in the Zoom. If you are joining us via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Okay. We have no virtual participants that are requesting to speak.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn this thing?
you can just adjourn if there's no further business.
See ya. This meeting, thank you all very much.
You, family, patient.